Wake up, we're grandmas. We are back. I have topped off my coffee. And yes. Just trying to figure out where I left off. Okay, we were on a video about taking the friction out of finding a therapist. I realized in the break, like, I could just show you. I could just go to Psychology Today instead of just, like, talking you through the fictional or hypothetical step-by-steps. Hopefully for some, are able to take that less fictional route and more into the non-fictional realized route. But all the same, I just realized, like, instead of, like, talking about what that looks like, I can just show you you know, some therapist bios and what they're, you know, where to identify their therapy modalities, and if, you know, if they do offer a consultation, like what that looks like. You know, adds a visual element to exactly what I was going for. Bienvenidos, Jonas. Solo inglés, por favor. It's funny, once upon a time I had like an English only tag on the stream and I took it off like a month ago. Nora Tales! I almost didn't see you there. The color palette on the pseudonym there was kind of matching the first time chatter there. But Nora, another one of my favorite streamers in Streamland Dreamland, welcome in. We were chatting about all sorts of things. My changes coming at the end of the month. We're going through changes. Name change, specifically Discord name change and my own. I will no longer be Hogue Like Woe towards the end of the month. I would like for everybody to get accustomed to calling me Cable instead of Hogue. Hint, mother flippin' hint at what the name change might have something to do with. But we're retiring Hogue Like Woe towards the end of the month. Outside of that, talking therapy. What's that like? Encouraging people to go. I know it's likely aligned with so many targets, goals, resolutions, or otherwise, for those as they embrace change in the new year, and try to figure out actionable strategies to repair what's coming for them, coming up for them internally, as they experience so much externally. Cable-like television, yeah. There's an old Western called The Ballad of Cable Hogue as well, though I wouldn't likely reference that as like any note of my personality. Or fucking do. I don't know. Somebody hit me with zip code. Like any zip code. It doesn't have to be yours, but like an actual big city zip code if you know one. That will help this next part, because I'm gonna pull up Psychology Today, and what I'm gonna do is just show you like how to find a therapist. Let's try 90210. We're likely to find a lot of therapists in that zip code, but probably, I don't know. Let's see. There's a part of me that thinks we're gonna find some homeopathic, Vital Greens type of wellness influencer fucking therapists on there, but we'll see. We'll see what comes up. So Psychology Today is a publication, magazine that, you know, runs month to month. It's been around for years. They have a paid service where a therapist can request to be listed as a resource on their website, and they have a pretty comprehensive list of resources. In most cases, it's up to date. So you know how sometimes if you've been shopping around for like a new primary care provider and you call them and it doesn't say anything online about them not taking new patients, and you finally get the gumption to call them and say, "I'm sorry, we're not taking new patients right now, sweetie honey baby." Can you give me a referral somewhere else? What the fuck is a referral? I don't do that. I don't know what that is. Don't you talk that liberal speak to me. Get off my phone. And then you wonder why you wasted your time in the first place. They don't do that. You can lessen the likelihood of someone telling you they're not taking new patients. They'll probably advertise that or just won't be present on Psychology Today. And this is not a one-size-fits-all, just like therapy. This is not a one-size-fits-all solution to lifestyle stressors, but this is not a one-size-fits-all resource, is where I'm going with that. There are plenty of other like group practice websites where you can look through kind of a Rolodex of their list of providers by specialty and type, such that if you're looking on like Alma, for example, that I mentioned earlier, you can usually find prescribers in your area in addition to talk therapists of different modalities. And so if you were looking for both pharmacological and non-pharmacological interventions, meaning your psychotropic med management and your talk therapy, there are portals to find both solutions there. Yeah, I'll try to take the overwhelm out of it here. This is not quite showing everything we want. Hey, look, it's people. Let me scoot over this way and chat. Y'all can hug me a little bit. Nanya, welcome. Good to see you. So this is showing therapists in Texas. So we can go by state, or otherwise let's see what happens if someone wants to hit me with a non serial drama zip code. I know it's a real zip code, but we can look in Beverly Hills 90210, or we can look somewhere like in your state. Actually, let me take this back. So what you would do, just to take it step by step, what you would do is go to Psychology Today. So that's just psychologytoday.com, which is here. Well, let's try that. Let's say 75254, high control issues. Thank you for that. And then from the main part of the website, at the very top, it says find a therapist. And they also have a handy search bar right there, but you can click on both one or the other. So if we look at 75254, okay, so somebody give me a diagnosis or something from the past that they want to work on. Not even nothing that you specifically want to work on, just an imagined hypothetical, like tell me any diagnosis you're aware of or any psychosocial problem that you're aware of that you'd want to work on. We can use that to create a sort of case to manage here. Give me a case to manage. You like the new haircut? Thank you. I feel so much lighter and agile. Cognitively and otherwise. All right, so personality, PTSD. All right, so what we can do if we're looking for a trauma-informed therapist, pretty common, but not every therapist is going to specialize in trauma. We can count on most therapists to have fundamentals in what's called cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's CBT. And there's nothing wrong with CBT. As a fundamental, it's something you more or less consider every other type of therapy from Aaron Beck's CBT model, who's still alive, by the way, is empirically validated and supported in its practice, but it's not globally going to be as effective. I don't want to say inappropriate, but it's not globally going to be as effective. There's no such thing as bad therapy in this case, really, with the exception to like fucking conversion therapy. But in most cases, as far as it relates to billable practices and standards and practices associated with empirically led, research-backed credentials, you're not going to find a bad therapy. CBT is fine. Mimetic culture kind of got taken the fuck out of hand when it relates to CBT associated with treatment for like ADHD and autism spectrum disorders, and people kind of besmirching in a really weird, maligned way about CBT. And treatment for even like PTSD, but especially like autism spectrum disorder. It is literally better than nothing. I'm not going to say it's the end-all be-all for persons with autism spectrum disorder, but as I said earlier, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. I would recommend dialectical behavioral therapy over CBT for persons with ADHD or autism spectrum disorder, because what are the common components of those are having big emotional reactions to change. And what DBT teaches us is how to synthesize complex processes and appreciate sort of a Venn diagram of interactions so that you can synthesize and process the nuance before you make the behavior behind the cognition that you're already thinking about, and making sense of the emotions that come up for you internally. DBT is excellent for that. Does that mean CBT is dog shit for ADHD or autism? No. But there are plenty of people who had a bad experience with a provider who specialized in that, and I think just got carried away. Just pointing out what I've seen online that I didn't quite make rational sense of, because it didn't make sense to besmirch like an entire modality that is empirically helpful for a lot of people. But again, it's not the end all be all. Like, y'all have heard me talk about EMDR and internal family systems therapy well more than I have ever mentioned CBT. But the cool thing about CBT is there are a lot of fundamental practices and like worksheets that you can find online that are CBT derived that will provide actionable next steps for how you problem solve your daily like psychosocial stressors if you experience them. And they're easy to do if you're talking about ways you learn to think about thinking, and when you're better able to teach yourself when you practice mindfulness. That term gets thrown around a lot, but when you practice mindfulness and bringing awareness to changes in your body connected to the big emotions that you're then naming and identifying and recognizing and catching in that little gap between when you've had an activating event, catching that before you've noticed the activating event, and then reacting. This will help you catch that, identify, and process so that you can respond versus react. Now, for the case that we're managing here, PTSD, we're looking for a therapist who specializes in trauma. So we're looking at, by license here, we've got a licensed marriage and family therapist. Does licensed marriage and family therapists mean they only work with couples? No. Does it mean that they're going to be better equipped if you are seeking them for couples therapy? Not necessarily. There are plenty of LMFTs who get that license that take just as long to get it as an LPC or an LCSW, that work fine at an interpersonal level. But they may have a little more training in working with couples and how couples recognize, directly or indirectly, how their communication styles and potential kind of cognitive pitfalls like assuming or mind reading or thinking some covert cue was going to be picked up on later and some need met without actually explicitly making that request. They can help couples realize how they may be creating their own chaos and what they can actually do about it to deepen their connectedness. There's a lot of Gottman Institute influenced corrective actions that kind of guide their therapy modalities, which are good because I mean there's a lot that goes on in repairing your deepest, most personal relationships and what you can translate to strategies to managing social connections of all types. Licensed professional counselors are fine. Let's read their bio and see where we go from here. Veda's mission is to provide quality and meaningful counseling for clients so they can achieve the life they envision and desire. Her approach to, let me see if I can make this a little easier to read on me. Oh, that gets rid of the links. I see. This doesn't really work all that well with reader view, does it? Veda's direct and caring approach. Curious about that word direct. Direct and caring approach helps clients learn how to face various life challenges and learn techniques to feel happier, less stressed, and empowered. She's worked in various nonprofit agencies. That's a good sign. And working with people from hard places and just complex like biopsychosocial needs. That's usually a good background to have if you're looking through their bio, which means they probably have a rich case management history, to use a recent term that we just dropped. Rich case management history. They've worked inpatient. They've worked in an inpatient setting. That's also very good. Ace, welcome in. Showing people how to find a therapist, or at least an example. This is one, not a one-size-fits-all solution, but how someone could hypothetically go about finding a therapist. And the hypothetical case to manage in this instance is somebody with let's just say complex personality, or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and perhaps some personality-related needs to go along with that. So what I don't see here is anything related to a specialization in trauma. This might be a good therapist to seek for just like generalized stress, generalized life stressors, coaching and education, identifying problems that you want to move forward with, and potentially a newly licensed person. I couldn't glean from that because it didn't say how long they've been providing therapy, but it did show their hourly rate, $135. Let's see. Sexuality therapist, Bloom Child Psychology. So you're going to find those who specialize in adolescents or adults or older adults. So more like what would be considered geriatric psychiatry, or sometimes shorthanded as Geri Psych. What we can do is Control F, and I'll put trauma on here. And it's okay, so we get to Sonia Mijares. Let's see what she has. You push forward, yet exhaustion, self-doubt, and disconnection persist. Trauma, whether from childhood neglect, loss, or unresolved emotional wounds, doesn't just fade, it becomes wired into your nervous system. So that tells me that she is educated enough and she knows the mind-body connection. She understands that there are physiological responses from our external world that sometimes are tethered to our cognitive and emotional memories from what happened to us in the past affecting our present. That's good language to look for when you're reading a bio. I say that because there are some people who have a license, and it's not usually going to be an LCSW, but sometimes LPCs spend very little time in, say, taking biology or A&P, anatomy and physiology, or even zoology, because they wouldn't have potentially had an undergraduate requirement for as many hard sciences to inform their degree plan, versus more clinical social workers especially would have likely had at least some kind of human science outside of psychology, better informing the psychological components of their line of work. I tend to deeply appreciate social workers as well because, and this isn't globally encompassing all social workers over LPCs or LMFTs or licensed psychologists, but their coursework is often grounded in social changes. They use the phrase biopsychosocial a lot, but a lot of external events and systematic happenings as a result of living under a capitalist system, and how that often creates and exacerbates conditions like being unhoused and undereducated and under-resourced when it comes to healthcare access, and a lot of those societal pain points that our country has created that I'm not going to say we wouldn't have mental health needs to meet if we weren't living under that system, but the point is bringing awareness to that sort of degree plan, and social workers tend to have a better comprehensive understanding of the societal impact on what has brought that person into their office. So a little more nuance. And again, that doesn't besmirch any other license. It's just by degree plan, they're going to have a variety of experience versus a potentially more narrow scope. And that doesn't mean somebody with an LPC wouldn't have taken biology or A&P or whatever in their undergrad. It's just less likely because it isn't always required. Time does not heal all wounds, as it turns out. Yeah, not always, unless we take action with the time that we have. It's the unfortunate part of healing from trauma is that we are not responsible for what happened to us, but we are responsible for healing from it. But I know some brilliant LPCs. I've worked with some absolutely brilliant LPCs that do get it, and they've worked every level of care, just like the previous bio that we read. I mentioned they worked in an inpatient psychiatric hospital, and they likely had some case management in their background. So if we're looking at somebody who is specialized in helping someone with trauma, this might be a good person to start with, because look what modality she uses. She uses EMDR. So that's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. EMDR, for those that don't know, is a therapy modality that a lot of persons with trauma has found successful because it does not require the person to retell their story. Retelling the story, and this happens a lot with CBT, which can follow some criticism for those who don't jive with that, but it's still a fine modality. EMDR does not require the person to narrate the exact specifics of how they were hurt when that big, too much, too fast, too soon trauma happened and created that wound that they're trying to repair from. EMDR does not require spinning that yarn again and reactivating the system in a sense that it does more harm than good or takes longer to create the repair that you want to see. EMDR doesn't require that. It just requires getting to that point of knowing where you are internally, and then creating a target that you want to hit, and then using, like what Ashley was saying earlier, somatic of the body experiences to, while that memory is active within you, creating a target and using some what's called bilateral stimulation to kind of reduce the severity of what's coming up for that person when they recall their trauma. But again, it doesn't require telling that story, at least out loud. And it can be, that target for EMDR can be anything. It doesn't have to be a trauma. It can be stress from a job. It can be interpersonal stress with your partner, whatever it is, stress related to Twitch, whatever you bring into the office. Because I guarantee if you're seeing a therapist, you're not going to sit there and honestly say, I don't have anything to talk about today. You got something. But if we're looking for a trauma therapist, someone who is using a more contemporary modality with a rising body of evidence to support its effect, and more peers in your community who've probably experienced EMDR in a positive way, that's a good thing to look for. And I mean, she clearly says, I specialize in trauma and PTSD, women's issues, and self-esteem. So the question there is, do they do a free consultation? You can scroll down and see, do they do a free consultation? You can email them, learn more about, let's see, it's worth asking. They're an LPC supervisor, which is cool. And she mentioned CPTSD, so that's additional verbiage to look forward to that's actually encouraging, because CPTSD is a diagnosis that is not yet formally recognized in what we use in America as the DSM. But what they use in the UK, they do recognize CPTSD, disease for complex. For those that don't know, the short version of CPTSD over PTSD is that you have multiple, not necessarily overlapping, but they can be, but multiple traumatic episodes that are still impacting you in the present, such that it is effectively complex. There are multiple episodes to try and repair. And so for her to mention that is, again, encouraging. This would be, if I were seeking a provider in this area for telehealth or otherwise, and it's something you can look forward to, is if they can provide telehealth for you if you don't want to leave the house or do the windshield time thing to make the commute to their office, or if you are like me and struggle with being on time to most anywhere, telehealth is a wonderful accommodation. And I can tell you, having done therapy both in person and telehealth, there is really no difference to me, and there's actual data to support that telehealth therapy is as effective as in-person therapy. For whatever that's worth. I've mentioned telehealth to people before, just doing like basic psychoeducation. Like, is it as good as in person? I want in person. It's not a mandate. There's no requirement for that. If you feel a little bit squishy about that, I think it's normal to wonder if I'm talking to a screen. But I mean, we're on Twitch. You're probably okay with talking to people behind a screen at this point. Some of you may have even enjoyed the luxury of being able to work from home in some cases. So worth looking forward to see if they do provide telehealth, telepsych. They may use different verbs for that, but remote sessions. So there you go. Boom. This is what I was glossing over. You can reach out to Sonia if you're in the area. This is, again, hypothetical. Do not call. Do not dox this person. I didn't realize until now that I'm showing actual phone numbers, which is not totally okay to do on Twitch. And I also probably don't need to say that, but don't blow this person up, for fuck's sake. But genuine inquiries only. This is something you want to look for, is if they do provide a consultation. This is what I was saying before we went on break, is not necessarily therapists that are worth their salt, but a therapist that actually want to work with you and have kind of a retention focus in mind, will want to, for their own benefit as well as yours, make sure that you're not wasting each other's time. So you can get a good sense of what you're both about in that 15-minute conversation. Just bear in mind that it's a consultation. That doesn't mean free therapy. Consultation is like this. We're just doing a brass tacks conversation. We're not unloading every granular detail of what's happened to us. And even in the first therapy session, you're not going to do that and expect to get very far. You can share whatever you want. Your first therapy session, it's a matter of what's impacting you in that moment, what's coming up for you. That's a pattern that you want to change. But just to manage expectations, for those who don't know, when you're doing a consultation with a therapist, you're just learning from them what they specialize in, what their expertise is in, where their edges of knowledge are, and what your goals are. You tell them what you want to work on. I'll let you know if that's something that is in their wheelhouse. And if not, if it doesn't seem like a good fit, you can ask them if they have the resources that they can share with you, or you can go back to a site like Psychology Today. So I would say, if I was helping manage, doing case management for a client that wanted to work on trauma, this is a therapist I would probably include in a resource packet emailed back to them, like, consider this person, give them a call and see what you think. You also want to look out to see if they are an independent provider or if they're with a group practice. So when you go to them, you can always check and see, like, are they managing themselves, or are they with a group practice? A lot of providers have a hard time building their business and finding clients independently, just because it's hard to get out there and network and be discoverable and then pay for that. I mean, you think how much time everybody invests in silly shit like social media or whatever we do here, which is a good time, not to diminish it. But think about a therapist trying to build their caseload and clientele and develop a practice for themselves. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and years, usually 3 to 5 years, before they're kind of stable and can do that full time without part-time work supplementing, what they're doing. And that's not because there's a overwhelming abundance of therapists out there too. Like, sure, Texas is a big state with the high population. Dallas, Fort Worth are two of the biggest cities in the world. And they'll be more fortunate here than some other places to not run the risk of being in a provider shortage area. But my point is, they're not really going to be competing for business. It's just a matter of getting themselves out there, getting known, and being trusted in the community, being trusted by other primary care doctors, other psychiatrists who want to supplement their clients' well-being by offering them therapy to a counselor. Getting on insurance panels if they are billing insurance is another thing that can take some time. So you can look at that, and you can also see, I guess where I'm going with that is, because it takes so much time for an independent provider to build their business, it is not uncommon for them to work with a larger group practice. So I mentioned Alma earlier. ALMA is one of them. There are several others. I don't want to name all of them and run the risk of like endorsing them and someone have a bad time, but if you look for online group practices, you've probably heard them advertised in like a podcast you listen to or something. But you can look and see if they are affiliated with the group practice, and if they're cash pay only or insurance. You usually have a little more flexibility with cash pay than you do billing your insurance. If you are at all worried about your insurance knowing your diagnoses, whatever's going on with you there, you don't have to disclose that. You can do cash pay and avoid insurance all the same. So for confidentiality purposes, you may prefer to be a cash patient versus doing anything that would be on the books. Reason being is because if they're billing insurance, they're going to bill what are called CPT codes that are associated with the type of therapy and the amount of minutes they're providing therapy to you for, to be reimbursed from that insurance carrier, like your Humanas, your Uniteds, your Blue Crosses, whatever else. To be reimbursed, they're going to have to list what your diagnosis is and what the intervention was, how long you spent together. They're not going to put in detail what you discussed. That's not going to happen, but they are going to list your diagnosis. If you don't want that to happen, then, go the cash route. They're not going to bill insurance, and they're not going to have to disclose that, and it just stays between you. Happy affiliate. Yeah, I didn't know that until I logged in. I received no other notification other than Twitch chat telling me that it was Twitch anniversary, but yay! We'll celebrate. We're celebrating. I'm celebrating by showing people how to find a therapist, as one does. Hey, Zeke. It's good to see you. So I guess all of that to mention, like, you can look while you've gone through their bio, you can look to see if the therapist is self-directed, like independently managing their own practice, or if they're with a group practice. And you can usually tell by when you go to request an appointment where it takes you. If it goes to like a simple practice type website or something else, you'll know I didn't see like a link change anywhere in there, so they may be an independent provider and just have a nice website. But for what it's worth, I mean, we can kind of do the same thing if we go to Alma. So Alma, same thing. It's not really showing it on the screen here, but at the top of, I went here. This is just an example of a business where you can find a provider. At the very top of the page, same thing like on Psychology Today, you would click on Find a Therapist and kind of narrow down what you're looking for. You can see where it says there, individual therapy, couples therapy. Family, adolescent, or otherwise. If you're reconnecting with an established provider, search for them by name. But kind of like before, and what I mentioned and how I like qualified finding my own provider before, and I've used this site. You can narrow down preferences on religion, how sexually affirming they are. Are they LGBTQIA affirming? What are their specialties? Do they specialize in EMDR or DBT or trauma-informed CBT or something else? Internal family systems, whatever it is. You can look for that same thing and kind of work your way through. This is also a site where if you're looking to couple or pair your non-pharmacological, your talk therapy, if you're looking to bolster your talk therapy with psychotropic medication management, and sometimes people need both, they do that too. I won't walk you through the rest of that here. I think we did a fine job on Psychology Today. Thank you again for that reference earlier. Just the hypothetical client living with PTSD or suspected PTSD, and that's the thing. If you suspect, you don't have to have a diagnosis. You can take a hunch at what you think your major needs are, and if you identify with the types of treatment bundled with the therapy modality associated with the diagnosis that you think you are, it doesn't mean that you do or don't have that diagnosis, but it does mean that you may benefit from having a further conversation with a licensed professional about it to build some traction. All right, let's get off of this person's page. Currently booting up The Sims 4. Lovely. Wouldn't it be lovely? To catch anybody up who is just joining, prior to the break and now, we were going through more or less how to find a therapist and reduce the friction and nebulous cloudy bits associated with how to do so and make the best use of yours and their time. Time being the most precious, irreversible resource that we can expend. But we're getting into understanding types of licensure, because not all of them have the same type of license to be qualified to diagnose and treat and manage you as a client or your overall needs. And along with their licenses, they're not all going to specialize in targeting the same populations, or for that matter, the same behavioral health needs. They're all going to have specialties. I would be weary of a provider who says they do everything. That is kind of a red flag for me, but perhaps not for thee, as I would say, any given stream, listen to me at your own motherfucking peril. And we can do this again. I like to do this, I don't know, every 90 days or so, just because I know every 90 days or so we may have one or two new people hanging around here routinely. It's just good to have a refresher, and that way for your own knowledge, for that matter. If you have friends, family, people you care about that you want to now show, like, hey, I've got a rough sense on how to find a therapist. Would you like to sit down and do that together? If you're comfortable enough with somebody who's curious and encouraged to make those next steps, you now have a better sense, hopefully, of how to do that. If not, ask me again. I will walk you through it. You asked me something earlier, and does PTSD tend to have less obvious symptoms? Not really. I think in most cases it's as much or more debilitating. Everything is kind of case by case and person to person and how it presents, though. And with that some days are going to be better than others, right? Depending on external stimuli, how it impacts that person's internal makeup, and how many known or unknown triggers there are associated with that person's trauma. But there's probably more moments of dissociation, and if nobody's super familiar with disassociation, it is a trauma response. So think of, I know I say this a lot and be like the third time I've said it today, but it's an easy way to remember how to define a trauma, at least the Peter Levine way of defining a trauma. The too much, too fast, too soon, big hurt that happened to the person. I lost my train of thought. Damn it. The too much, too fast, too soon, big hurt that happened to that person, you can get a sense of how that comes up for them in the present, and how often they may experience something like intrusive thoughts or dissociation. And dissociation is not dissimilar from daydreaming in a way. That's where I was going with it. It's not dissimilar from daydreaming in a way, in the sense that if you've ever daydreamed and you've kind of got that sense of somebody when they notice you kind of drifting off and then they clap and you snap out of it. Very similar mechanisms are happening to somebody when fight or flight is present, when those protective mechanisms are active, so that your body is not as able to vividly recall the too much, too fast, too soon, big hurt that happened. Those protective mechanisms are out there or are active rather, to protect the person from truly reliving that moment, though that is part of what intrusions may occur, is kind of internally reliving that in a way. There will be some disturbances, there will be nightmares will be common, but dissociation happens as kind of a fucked up byproduct of having that trauma, such that they may feel out of body, because that's how, at least in that moment when that big hurt happened, they had sort of an out-of-body protective mechanism active. And why so often, I like the IFS, I like the internal family systems language of having parts, that part that came up to protect them, to shield them, or you in this case, from truly being present for the, say, recurrent abuse, or whatever it was, or the car crash, or, whatever the big hurt was, right? That part that was present that the therapist can work with the client on later. Or in this case, if it's complex PTSD, right, we're talking about multiple episodes of different episodes where there are going to be different parts, different protective maps that are associated with big physiological responses that they have to kind of map out and identify when they happen, what's coming up for them, what is the frequency, duration, severity of these symptoms, under what conditions, and then, how to heal from it. Let's see. Let's get to something a little lighter hearted. I'll save this for tomorrow. I don't know. I think we can do all of it. We're fine. So as you probably have experienced in recent media, it only compels you keeping it in front of your face as long as possible. No sooner than you have scrolled past a recent horrendous event, you've got another one that has freshly blossomed at the bottom of your thumb. So psychologically speaking, if you are witnessing, and this is traumatic, it isn't necessarily going to qualify anybody for PTSD, but simply said, it is stressful. As soon as you have had like a big stressfully activating event, like watching ICE act like state secret police and shoot people in the head, no sooner than you have had a moment to process that, well, you haven't had a moment to process that, because then there's another horror in your feed directly underneath that, at which point I would advise, if you have seen one horrific thing in your phone, you already would benefit from going ahead and putting it down and giving yourself some time to process what you just saw before stacking on another stress that you probably don't have the bandwidth for, but the amygdala in your brain doesn't know that and wants you to keep scrolling. Nor do the creators of the algorithms give a fuck about your mental well-being as to what content you see in your feed. And that doesn't mean hide away from the horrors. It means give yourself time to process what you've just seen. And that doesn't mean that you're going to make sense of it all at once. But if you've noticed some, kind of like we were talking about CBT skills earlier, when you notice big feelings coming up for you and you bring awareness to that, congratulations, you're already doing mindfulness practice. Well done. But if you can take that next step and instead of continuing to scroll as your reactive mechanism, but instead going, oh yeah, I just saw something really fucked up and I just kept scrolling and I saw someone else post that same fucked up thing again without even really checking in with myself. There's enough peer confirmation here to reinform what I've just seen was in fact fucked up, and everybody's basically saying the exact same thing in 100 different ways. I should have put my phone down 3 fucking hours ago. Oh my god! Go ahead and put your phone down in that little gap when you recognize that you're feeling that in your body. Go ahead and put your phone down and check in with yourself, walk away, get away from the screen, do something for yourself, and then come back to it. That doesn't mean that you're ignoring the action. It doesn't mean you're trying to bury your head in the sand. You are getting yourself back to a grounded regulatory moment. Then you can do something about it, like check in with a friend. Have you seen this? Check in with your community. Have you seen this? What are we doing about it? Are we organizing about this? What can we as a community do when I as an individual can feel helpless, and feeling helpless just feels horrible in these situations? What do we do? And that is one of the biggest questions you can ask, one of the more action-oriented, productivity-focused questions you can ask, solutions-focused questions you can ask, rather, is what can I do? And have a good understanding of your locus of control, what you can do in the moment. If you decide to go take a hot bath about it afterwards, that's fine, come back to it. Just complete the loop. Just complete that loop. You had an activated stress response, get yourself back to homeostasis, so we're always trying to find, and then seek the next step so that you're not just barraging yourself with this cacophony of horrors, because that's part of this administration's goal, is to continue to flood the zone with about the most extreme things that we can't at an individual level do much about, but we heal in community. So if we are not frozen in that state of fight or flight and in a mindful, actionable place, and remembering that we do heal in community and we're not divided at an individual level and we can do something about it, that's where you want to be. I would hope anybody get there. And again, yeah, easier said than done. We've had a long time to grow up with these fucking things, and I'm holding up my phone for those that didn't see it. But we did not evolve to have that much information, that serious bit of information in our faces to that extent, on repeat, ad infinitum. But we did evolve to take care of ourselves, and we can do a pretty good job of that. And some of this won't tell you what you already don't know, but there is some good stuff in here, so I'm just going to read it. I am going to reformat what we have here. And I think sometimes even I would avoid discussing a lot of this just because I know it's already in your feed, and I think I regret reinforcing my own avoidance strategies by thinking that the community isn't mature enough to handle this. We need to talk about it. Granted, this doesn't say anything about Miss Good. This article's from about a year ago, but it's still relevant. Many of the teens and young adults Don Grant, PhD, has worked with. Many of the teens and young adults Don Grant, PhD, has worked with, both through Newport Academy Treatment Center and his Los Angeles-based private practice, are experiencing a stress that is directly related to news they've learned about through social media or more traditional outlets. They may have just read about an animal on the verge of extinction or the latest update on melting polar ice caps. Grant is president of the APA's Division 46, Society for Media Psychology and Technology. They may not even recognize at first that the news has affected their mood, but he said they're perseverating, meaning hyperfixating. They're perseverating on it. It's bothering them. For those that don't know, I joke about, these devices being a fire hose of dopamine. Good thing, bad thing, right? We use these to exchange information. We use these to resource each other up. But as we keep going, I think often we refer to dopamine and we think it's strictly associated with pleasure. Like, I've got some, fire up Super Mario Brothers 3. Hit me with that dopamine, mama. Dopamine is not a pleasure chemical. It is one of 100 neurochemicals in your brain, 100 plus neurochemicals in your brain, and one of a few associated with reward, not pleasure. Granted, there is some overlap on that Venn diagram with reward and pleasure, but if you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, dopamine is one of the more advantageous chemicals we evolved to have, because we could associate dopamine and reward with good nutritious foods and being active and healing in community and staying social and not ostracizing people unless they have done significant harm to the group, right? That's dopamine. So it's not just play game dopamine. It's so much more than that. There's serotonin, there's norepinephrine, and so many other hormones that are active as reward components and pleasure principle components that are derived from scrolling your feed. And that's the thing. When you are angry, when you are activated, when you are in that excitatory state, and you've seen an event that does bring up some complex emotions like anger and confusion and doubt and uncertainty and overwhelm, it's kind of all of the above. And if you continue to scroll when you see that and you haven't taken a break to pause and process and ground and then come back into it so that you can try to read a little more objectively, this is where empathy can get you in trouble. Save some empathy for yourself by continuing to scroll the feed and not give yourself time to process. You're reinforcing all of the same reward chemicals and patterns of continuing to scroll, such it makes it very difficult to do the nice, pretty, tidy mindfulness things like remember to check in with your body when you're activated and put your phone down and take a break and get grounded and then come back. And then you see where I'm going with that? In today's hyper-competitive and incessant news delivery ecosystem, slightly more than half of U.S. adults report they get their news through social media often or sometimes. According to Pew Research Center survey conducted from August 31st to September 7th, 2020, that's where that data came from. To drive clickbait, news coverage and social media postings also tend to highlight more negative or dramatic news. This leads to suffering from, as Grant describes it, media saturation overload. And he's not the only mental health professional noticing this specialized type of stress. Similar terms that have emerged recently include doom scrolling, we're all familiar, headline anxiety, which is a large part of the media's problem, that curates information intended to be engaged with. The engagement bait is intentionally created for your attention. That's what they profit off of. In a lot of cases, they profit from your attention. And they want it as often as possible. I mean, again, to hold up the phone like a boomer about it, your social media platforms of choice are designed to be like cognitive casinos that you have a very difficult fucking time finding the exit from. Similar terms, we've gone through those. While these terms are newer, the psychological strain of living through and absorbing dismal news is by no means confined to recent years, but lately, said Grant, another psychologist, the steady drumbeat of headlines and related social media commentary has been without pause. An ongoing pandemic, racial injustice, climate change, election controversy, mass shootings, the list goes onward. And it's still naming things that we've faced in the past 2 weeks on top of ICE overreach and executive overreach and, oh god, the horrors, right? There is no formally recognized disorder or diagnostic criteria. How many psychologists are seeing patients suffering from news-related stress and seeking guidance on how to help them? Researchers are working to understand the science behind the condition. But what they're referring to is what, headline anxiety, or just chronic stress. I would think it's probably better aptly stated as chronic stress from overconsumption of one, a product, and two, a news feed that reinforces the big emotions unless we teach ourselves how to process them, which we can do. It is possible. That's one thing I want to focus on, not get too negativity bias caught up. The takeaway from all of this is you can do something about it. Recent research studying news seeking and emotional responses has found that more exposure to the latest headlines, whether through traditional news outlets or highlighted on social media, can undercut mental health. Surprise! One study which surveyed 2,000 plus adults in the spring of 2020 found that the more frequently people sought information about COVID-19 across various mediums, television, newspapers, and social media, the more likely they were to report emotional distress, which is normal, but these same people are like a lot of us in that they're not as likely to have access to resources that encourage them to heal from what they just saw. Another study conducted by Matthew Price, PhD at the University of Vermont in Burlington, followed 61 adults for 30 days and asked them to assess how they were getting their pandemic-related news each day, along with documenting symptoms of depression, PTSD. Price said his colleagues found an association between the amount of exposure to news on social media and more depression and PTSD symptoms. To help patients cope in a world where news is omnipresent, psychologists and media expertise advise practicing dietary media restriction and taking steps to better process and right-size the news in their personal lives. To guard against patients becoming overwhelmed and developing a sense of learned helplessness, psychologists can encourage them to become more proactive in healthy ways on the issues that matter to them. And the news surrounding climate change, if the news surrounding climate change is weighing them down, they could get more advice in the advocacy organization or a local nonprofit working to address the issue. What sort of values does the patient want to strive for, and then what can they locally do to achieve, to work towards those values? Scrolling more on Twitter is not going to be in service of that value or any value one might have. Footnote, if you're still on Twitter, I would deeply, deeply fucking encourage drop kicking that. I mean, some of you already know, like the Grok LLM image generator, everything that it does is omnibus of fuckery that is Grok on X, formerly Twitter, is outright allowing undressing and devoid of consent nudifying of anybody. It's pretty fucked, and the owner is doing fuck all about it, is doing nothing about it. There's no accountability for that. We're doing something that is, by definition, illegal. And letting the worst people you've ever, hopefully never interacted with on 4chan, maintaining their veil of security and accountability and hopefully not very long anonymity of just getting away with being awful. So, do you want to be on a platform where that is seemingly encouraged by someone who is also ostensibly an outright fucking white supremacist? Probably not. There's no shades of gray for me with Elon Musk at this point, too, so if you're in this community and you ever wonder, like, yeah, but you consider, like, some of the philanthropic stuff that Musk has done, I'm not your guy. I ain't your guy, this ain't your community. Broadly speaking, uncertainty is a difficult psychological state for us, and uncertainty is usually the fuel for anxiety. Elon is a Nazi. I think that's fair to say. I think that is very fair to say. Broadly speaking, uncertainty is a difficult psychological state for us, and what this doesn't say, and my verbiage that I repeat here often, one of the greatest bits of fuel for our own anxiety is uncertainty. And one of the greatest antidotes for the pangs of uncertainty is seeking action, what you want to do about it. One of the study authors and a psychology professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison was repeating that a difficult psychological state for us is uncertainty. Thus, seeking out information should lead to a more positive psychological state. There's the funny thing about another one of the complex mechanisms of why we continue to scroll outside of it being neurochemically rewarding. Even if we're angry, because there are reward chemicals active while we're angry, because survival basis on rewarding us and getting to the other side of surviving, like an event where we had to be angry, like a fight or animal attack or whatever, those are built into us. We evolved with those. So too is the fuel of uncertainty here. When people feel like there's little they can do, seeking information out, rather. Let me start that over. Seeking information out should lead to a more positive psychological state, but when people feel like there is little they can do, such as when the COVID-19 infection prevention guidance kept shifting in the early months of the pandemic, and it did, they can develop a feeling of learned helplessness. And so it can get a little sticky. Where I was going with that other reward mechanism comment, I just remembered. It can feel strangely soothing to stay locked into that device that has all of those wonderful neurochemicals active, rewarding and reinforcing our doom scrolling if we're not being mindful about it. And similar to like rumination or why we repeat thoughts or events in our head, scenarios, it can feel like taking action. It can feel like doing something when it may be, but it's having diminishing returns on you. The research shows correlation. The study was not. What did I miss? Oh. The research shows correlation. The study was not designed to assess cause and effect. It's also possible that those who are emotionally distressed turn to the news to try and alleviate their emotional distress. My guess is that the relationship actually works both ways. I don't know if I have any more snoozes. I actually didn't anticipate taking this long. Let me see if I have some snoozes to drop. I might. I don't know, but I'm gonna check. I am out of snoozes. Piss. 90 seconds. Okay. Well, why don't we take a break and I'll get to the good part of the article. That's going to reinforce what I was saying earlier. Taking breaks and having sort of a fixed time in which you consume your media. Accessible as it is throughout the day. Like for me, I tend to check mine on like my lunch breaks or after breakfast, but it's not in front of me all day. Real quick though, ahead of the 3-minute break, scan your body meats one more time. Somatic, this is for those of you who want to check in with your intero and proprioception, your internal awareness of your sensory needs and your external awareness of that which you perceive around you, and identify any sensory needs that you have to meet, tingles you need to tune, thirst that you have to quench, temperature you have to change. And thank you for making me a part of your dopamine menu for the evening. I will be back in 3 minutes time. I will leave you tunes to tinkle by, or tinkle by, and we'll see you in 3 minutes.
Just to hear your song. Have you never let someone else be strong? There was a day when I just had to tell my point. I want like you. Now I don't mean to make you cry.
Wake up, we're at Grandma's. Welcome back, everybody. Oh, Heather, have you seen her? Have you seen, not Heather, have you seen yourself? But have you seen her? You look in my emote collection and you'll know who I'm referring to. But have you seen her, dear? Have you seen her yet, dear? She needs you. She needs to be spammed whenever we return from break when I say, wake up, we're at Grandma's. She's right there. Tell found her. Tell has found her. Like Jesus' footprints in the sand, she's been with us. Not the whole time, just for like a day. Just for a day. For those just joining us, coming back from break, I have tinkled. I have moved my body. I did a push-up. I'm getting strangely hot in here. I'm gonna lose an article for my own homeostatic needs. We're chatting through an article on the, most importantly, the shared connection between recognizing media overwhelm and what we can do about it. How we can kind of better digest the media that we consume. And when I say media, I mean like the big stressful stuff, not the good stress. But the big stressy, sometimes motherfucking depressy media that we need to know what's going on in the world, certainly. But not to the extent that we overconsume and it leads to our own detriment and getting caught wallowing in the doldrums such that we start taking worse care of ourselves and commensurately those around us who wish to see us keep shining. Which bears repeating. We heal in community. We're gonna keep doing that, mamas. We're at the part in the article, though, my favorite part, the what do we do about it part. We can overconsume and talk about the neurochemistry that rewards our addictions and proclivities all day. Some faults are also not our own as it relates to, again, the algorithmic cognitive casino design of some social media flavors that make it strategically difficult to find the exit from. But outside of that, what actionable strategies can we do? That's what this article gets into, in which, if I didn't say it earlier, this is from the APA. And no one can take me seriously with Shovel Knight in the background, which is the point. Listen to me at your own peril. Never take me too seriously. Oh wow, do we like it? Do we approve? I think Invader Tori did an excellent job. So Invader Tori did that one, and then the little cowboy cable that we got going on now. We got the cowboy cable here. Zeke, your plants. You have 2 plants. Let's get you some more plants, mama. You have a cat palm and a Dieffenbachia. I need to look up what that is. That second one. I have no memory of this plant. You shall not plant. Did you know they're called dumb canes? I didn't. I just go by the overview. I don't know how correct that's gonna be. Dieffenbachia. Dieffenbachia. You gotta really flim it up on the back end of that. Dieffenbachia, commonly known as dumb cane or leopard lily. I like leopard lily. Nickname in college? What's up? It was a part-time job. It is a genus of tropical flowering plants in the family Araceae. I need help with that. Listen, I can say acetylcholine all motherfucking day. That one's new to me, alright? Araceae? Sound it out. I've saved several locks of my hair. Check your mailboxes over the next few days. Araceae, thank you for breaking that down phonetically. I love you for that. I need that with some pseudonyms in chat sometimes. Like, break that down phonetically for me. I so don't want to disrespect your name. Help me help you. Okay. Back on the shared chronic stress that we sometimes absorb from our media consumption, what habits can we form around our media consumption? Because we can certainly put some actionable volume knobs, pressure on, pressure off valves around what we consume, yeah? Unless it's me, keep me on always in your hearts. In your hearts. Turn me off when you need to. Stephen Stonesy, PhD who specializes in treating people suffering from anger and resentment, first noticed a surge in those symptoms along with anxiety. Leading in 2016 election, for instance, many of the couples he treated were arguing more frequently. Said the Darnestown, Maryland therapist. Stonesley initially assumed the symptoms would fade after the election, but he soon realized that they had become chronic in some patients, a form of headline stress disorder. Not an actual diagnosis, just kind of colloquially using it here. As he described in a Washington Post opinion in 2017, although Stonesy acknowledged that the disorder is not a formal one with diagnostic criteria, he observed patterns of symptoms that are clearly connected to news exposure. The red flag is if you get the body tension. Remember, a lot of stress and big emotions we feel in our body first, somatically. The red flag is if you get this body tension or a rise in your pulse rate just before you check the news, then you have intrusive thoughts about the headlines, also a symptom of trauma. Then you think about them all day. Along with the propelling anger and anxiety, the constant news exposure, what seems to erode one's resilience, it lowers your coping capacity, so the things that you normally cope with, okay, you're not doing so well with. That's where you notice, it's similar to burnout in that way. If you notice like burnout at work, the things you would normally show up to do that are pretty routine, fundamental tasks for you are now adding more stress than they usually would, and you're noticing kind of your carrying capacity is more quickly reaching its threshold beyond what it would have, say, when you were doing it 6 months prior and no other real conditions have changed. That's burnout. Similar kind of stress responses coming up here. In the meeting environment, Stonesy described the smartphone as a sort of drug delivery system, incessantly delivering news and other information. There's a reason why it's discouraged by not even putting a tablet in front of a child until after they're 5 for how it affects their development, but I would even say later is better. Research has demonstrated that a phone alert spurs a small release of dopamine. Remember, a reward chemical, not pleasure. Your phone buzzes and you're going to reach it. You are hanging by one arm on a cliff. Even so, Stoney does not advise his patients to drop all links to the information ecosphere, because you want to be able to expose yourself to that without experiencing the overwhelm, but it's just kind of a frequency, duration, severity thing. You want to be able to be exposed to that and respond versus react. Same thing if you were dealing with an irate customer at work. You don't want to jump to, nope, you're getting punched in the throat, versus, I think I can de-escalate this, or know when you need to walk away. Drop all links to the, Stonesy does not advise patients drop all links to the information ecosphere, but instead to moderate their own exposure. If you try to go cold turkey, your imagination of what might be happening tends to be worse than what is actually happening. Grant similarly works with children and teens as well as their parents on healthy device management. Just as individuals with eating disorders can't avoid food entirely, it's nearly impossible for people to bypass all media. Some strategies Grant suggests is turn off notifications, like push notifications. I do that with almost everything. Add tech-free periods throughout the day. Don't bring phones to the dinner table. We started doing that recently, which I can't believe I ever was in the first place, but a lot of us do. It's pretty normal. Now that's one thing that I've tried to be more mindful about, is not bringing that device to a place where I'm trying to enjoy my meal with my partner or whoever, you know. Limit social media checks to 15 minutes. You can set timers for yourself. Some apps will allow you to set times within them to prompt you to shut them down after a interval. You can make use of those if you want to. You just gotta remember to do it. Parents can model good behaviors by not constantly checking their phones as well. For instance, when they are waiting in line, they can chat with the people around them rather than stay glued to their small screen. The payoff of moderating news exposure was reflected in the findings of a study conducted early in the pandemic during Spain's shutdown. Researchers found that 2/3 of the 5,545 Spanish adults surveyed reportedly reported, of the adults surveyed, of the over 5,500 adults surveyed, reported anxiety or depressive symptoms. But those who limited their exposure to COVID-19 news and tried to eat healthy, along with pursuing hobbies and more outdoor time, so adaptive coping strategies, right, were likely less stressed. So that's a good takeaway. And another example of, this telling us, kind of reinforcing what we probably already know is good for us, but it kind of helps bolster those coping strategies when we have some data to back it up. Sound, welcome in. Big anniversary for you today. I'm trying to remember what you posted earlier. You've got a birthday coming up in like a month. You've got an affiliate anniversary. You've got a lot going on. And maybe some new followers. Go say hi to Sound. Sound is an OG. One of our first friends here on yondertwitch.tv. Number 6. Brava. Brava. Got to get a drink here. Look here. Yeah? Drink time. Affiliate anniversary is in April. Okay, so we got some time to hype you up for that. What was going on today? Today we've chatted about and I've demonstrated how someone can find kind of navigating a specific slice of the healthcare system, but kind of taking some of the, well, not all, but some of the guesswork in navigating the behavioral health system and how one would find a therapist. Excuse me. How one would find a therapist, mute the microphone when they're clearing the caca out of their throat. How one would find a therapist, know some of the differences between licensure types, know what therapy modalities to look for to some extent as it relates to specialization in diagnoses like complex trauma. So we went through that, now going through an article on kind of a shared stressor that we all experience in our day-to-day and social media hygiene, talking about some of the data that's supported chronic stress responses, not dissimilar from like what burnout presents like, and people reaching their kind of cognitive bandwidth and carrying capacity and responding to stressors in a less healthy way because of the amount of time and media they've consumed. But they still want to be able to consume it and access that without kind of going to a 10, right? That's what this is about, is a shared experience in chronic stress associated with media consumption, but more importantly, how to manage that and be mindful of it to, my favorite things that we talk about, the what do we do about it strategies. It has been a good Sunday. I started things off right about 8 a.m. I was up late. 8 a.m. And went and got a few locks removed off my neckline. But check y'all's mailboxes for an individualized hair doll. Along the way, there was a lot of hair on the floor when we left. We got a little Metroid Prime down, peak with friends. Hard mode is kicking your butt though. Peak, yeah, the difficulty ramps up. It is still so much fun. That was one of my favorite community games ever, actually. It's so conducive for curating a healthy conversation with some friends, like deepening relationships. Perfect game for that. I love it so much. Sound will be back again tomorrow. There you go, folks. You can check him out. So back to this. We're going to get through this. I've got one more thing I want to get through, and then Twilight Princess tonight. If you're sticking around, if you're here for the retro gaming side of things and not so much for the psychobabble side of things, I get it. We are a retro gamer at heart. We'll do that too soon enough. Twilight Princess coming up. So some adaptive strategies to accommodate yourself here for your own media consumption and how you engage with all the access points on your phone and where you do consume your media, of which I've really enjoyed Ground News lately, along with a lot of Substacks, but all the same, Ground News has kind of been helpful to compare and contrast a lot of articles too. Turning off notifications, add tech-free periods through the day. One of the healthiest recommendations here is not bringing a distracting device to where you have dinner with your friends and family. Like, leave those aside. Live in the now. You can catch up on the news later. You're not a journalist, unless you are, and you need to stay glued on for your bread and butter. Parents, I would say parents and partners and peers, for that matter. can model good behaviors to others by not living in their phone. What was the term we looked up a while back? Flubbing? Fubbing? I think it was fubbing. PH. The pain point for some interpersonal relationships, especially those who couple. Partner to partner complaints about being a little too locked into their devices and their screen time, and feeling jealous of that, rightfully so in a lot of cases. I believe the term for that was fubbing. Don't fub your partner unless they ask you to. Model good behavior, though. It's funny, like, if I'm, like, at the grocery store, or if I have been in a restaurant and I've caught myself with the phone out and I've noticed a kid nearby, I put my phone away immediately. I just have a part of me that is hypercritical about having a phone out when a kid's around. I just don't want them to normalize that of just this always, like, I'm in public and this is how I deal with it. You know, it's just, I don't want to reinforce that socially. Better processing strategies. Psychologists can also help their patients size up their own perception of a risk more realistically as they pursue the latest news. Rare events like a lightning death can get a lot of media play. People vastly overestimate how likely it is that unusual event will happen to them. Same thing with, like, a plane crash, right? Providing broader context, including about relative risk, is particularly important when working with children. I think one of the key takeaway points here, it's loosely speaking to, is how you correlate that information, or how you correlate with that information, and how you can kind of ground one another by talking it through, which is a good excuse to put that device down and process with one another, whoever you share a household with, or a friendly relationship otherwise, whoever you talk that real shit out with. You know, give yourself a break. It's a good excuse to take a break from the phone, as I want to talk to somebody about this for real, versus just regurgitating, you know, RTing or quote resharing, whatever it is. Pursue a deeper reward and potentially something a little more soothing, for that matter, with an interpersonal strategy. But if you're soothing a child, and we have some parents here too, a great way to process with your young one about that, to kind of normalize what their experience is, ask them what they felt about it, walk them through it, and how rare some of those events are that they've seen something scary. Psychologists can ask open-ended questions. Bear in mind, this article was written for, like, licensed professionals, so I'm gleaning from this to wax a little more layman's about it. Psychologists can ask open-ended questions from the start, gaining a better sense of what the child knows, including context. If the child is worried about news that might pose an ongoing risk, such as wildfires that periodically flare nearby, work with them to develop an action plan. What would they do, and who would help them in an emergency? Ask them to list all the people in their lives who could assist, who are the helpers. Not just family members, but neighbors, teachers, and firefighters. It demonstrates to the child that there is a larger safety net for them. And you kind of, especially for a young mind that's still developing, that prefrontal area where we kind of associate where mindfulness would live, and they're a little more amygdala brained and a little more impulsive and a little more aligned with easier access to that negativity bias. You can help nurture getting them out of that and proliferating kind of solutions-focused strategies by discussing them and demonstrating them, modeling them. And it works with adults too. It's just more impressionable upon developing minds. One practice Stonesy uses with his adult patients is to suggest they write down an anxiety-producing headline in longhand. The idea is to slow down the processing, hopefully moderating anxiety in the process. Anxious thoughts speed by, and the faster they go, the less realistic they get. If you slow down the process by writing them down, they're more realistic, and then you can assign a probability how likely that is to happen. There are a couple of grounding exercises you can find that relate exactly to that as well. I think I've got those in the Discord too, but I'll drop them in there afterwards just to kind of recycle them because they're worth having. But additional strategies to observe your own thoughts on paper, map them out, self-soothe in a productive way that doesn't require reinforcing the cycle of anxiety or hiding from the news that you want to process anyway. If a teen is fretting about the looming extinction of an animal, they can get involved in an organization trying to save it, be a part of the solution, which will bind your anxiety and will make it feel so powerless or that the world is spinning off its axis. Same thing goes with even sharing resources about the passion project, the cause, whatever your core values are connected to. Anything solutions oriented is going to help, again, get out of that negativity bias and crawling out of the all too easy to sink into doldrums that we can ruminate within sometimes. It's not just patients who suffer from media oversaturation. Price realized that amid his habit of scrolling Twitter, which again we talked about earlier, dropkick that shit, he was too often soaking up the delusion of negativity. I became aware of it. To put it clinically, it was bumming me out. So he scaled back dramatically with only the occasional post to support his students or to quip about the challenges of parenting young children. After just several days, I turned the temperature down on my despair and outrage. The effects of reading or watching a lot of negative news coverage can harm both the mind and body. Again, there's physiological responses there along with that neurochemistry that reward, protect, and sometimes overserve to where we can use the more executive functions to soothe, walk back, be mindful, make good use of our time with what we experience. Signs of overwhelm and overconsumption with the media, and that it's you're getting diminishing returns on the exposure with that, and some signs to pay attention to. And a lot of this is also very similar to burnout again. Intrusive thoughts about the news articles or current events throughout the day, persistent anger, resentment, or anxiety generated by reading news articles. I would also qualify a lot of this if you are seeing something that is angering, that is activating, like an injustice, like executive overreach, or like ostensibly law enforcement straight up murdering someone, then it is valid to feel anger and uncertain, and a concert and constellation of other emotions mapped to how you're beginning to process. That is normal. So it's not, I don't want to take away from this to be something that you interpret as boxing that up. Suffice to say, validate what you're experiencing before turning a little more inward and stepping away from the device that is exposing you to it. Increased alcohol use to self-medicate or reduce stress. So if you're relying on other maladaptive strategies, so you think about adaptive, if you think about coping skills, right? It's rare that we ever discuss coping strategies and then divide them up. I know mimetic culture tends to reinforce like copium, that kind of shit. But if you're talking like real talk about coping skills, just like stress, there's adaptive stress, there's maladaptive stress, there's eustress. Just like with, so too is there with coping skills, there are adaptive coping strategies and maladaptive coping strategies. So if I've gotten in an argument with my partner and I wasn't using mindfulness practices to really hear them, or saying something passive aggressive, and then I go outside and take a few puffs of smoke about it a few minutes later, that's an example of a maladaptive strategy, maladaptive coping strategy. Adaptive coping strategy would be like in that same scenario, letting my partner know, hey, I recognize I got a little heated, I want to come back to this is important to me, and talk this through and let me know where we got off the rails, that kind of thing. But they're examples of adaptive and maladaptive strategies. Or like gaming, maladaptive strategies, you see the real nerds, the drywall punchers, take their rage out on their computer screens or their devices, to likely some impact on their wallets, as well as their potential temporary dexterity. Hope they heal. But those would be considered maladaptive, or if you just want to call it what it is, dog shit coping strategies. Adaptive strategies would be to learn from their therapist or practice some grounding skills on what to do when they notice anger coming up for them. If they've lost a match, capture the flag, or didn't summit peak, or crash the bus and RV there yet, or whatever disappointment was, because it's all reward dopamine until there's that hit of disappointment, and then declines, and the brain wants to get right back to that reward mechanism as quickly as possible. So again, reminding yourselves and staying informed on the what do you do about it components are going to go a long way to mitigate the rumination that can feel like doing something about it, but isn't always helpful. Again, diminishing returns with that. Managing headline stress. Headline stress can affect anyone. That's what this article was calling it. Again, I was saying it's not dissimilar from burnout from exposure to familiar environments. But what they're kind of colloquially defining as headline stress is they suggest writing down the stressful headline on paper to slow processing, turn off smartphone news notifications, set your timer, or get in the app and set a self-accommodate with a timer for how long you engage with that content. Set a strict no screens rule, what boundaries you have for yourself and where you do and don't access your devices. Bind anxiety. Bind it. You are enchanting yourself. You're casting an incantation. You're binding anxiety by taking some kind of action. Remember, the antidote to anxiety is action, and the fuel is often uncertainty. Bearing in mind that uncertainty is also normal to experience. Perhaps donating to a cause, joining an aid group, or signing a petition. All valid strategies for the do something about it component. I will share this here in chat. So you've got this for later. Old Tech Guy, welcome in. Very good to see you. What exciting things have you been up to this weekend, if any? Rest can also be exciting. That's fine. None of you find it rude when friends. You've been fubbed. Let me see if I can find that article. We talked about that a while back. You can share with them, like, you can drop a, you're fubbing me, and I notice when you're fubbing me, I feel isolated and neglected. Use your feeling words, use your I statements, and hit them with that fubbing. Teach them the vocabulary. Remind them how engaging and rewarding you are. There's a wiki article on fubbing now. We got it from, was it a Psych Today article or was it Psych Info? I forget. Oh yeah. Okay, it was this looks familiar. Yeah, here you go, Nanya. You can share this with them. Fubbing is common but offensive. You don't want to fub in your relationships. Don't fub your partner. Or your family. Want ya, need ya, I got to have you, darling. Have yourself a lie down sound. Thank you for the raid. Delightful to see you as always. We have been lost in the sauce on RV there yet, and I miss Peak, so those have kind of been my social gaming, community gaming of choice lately. I'd love to get you in on another outing for one of those. Okay, I'm not getting back into this, just re-sharing an article that we went through not too long ago. What was it? What else was I gonna do? I think we covered a lot. Let's play video game. Let's do video game. I think it's time for that. We've gone through plenty. Oh wait, I did have like a lighter-hearted article. How am I doing on time? I don't usually chat this long. It's usually 1.5 hours, borderline 2. I don't usually go this long. How am I doing on time, mama? Oh, 3 hours. Hot shit, in 3 hours. Keep it going, never stop talking. You're a fucking robot. Keep going. I hear you. And I am. I can keep going. However, 3 hours of just chatting. Oh, wait, let's get through this lighthearted article. It says 9 to 11 minute read. I think it's shorter than that. Plus, it's music related. I love talking music research as much as I love talking like video game research. We've got enough audio files here in chat. That's why we like each other. We like sharing music with one another. If you ever want a taste of like my own proclivities and what's on my playlist, it's usually what few songs I'll spin up at the very beginning of stream that get the VOD muted for that section. Let's get through this, and then I'll take a short break and say hi to my partner that just got home. So this one's fun. How musical genre and familiarity shape your inner thoughts. Did you know? Karina Petrova did. Listening to music is often perceived as a leisurely activity. Did you know? Did you know that you listen to music and it's leisurely and that you enjoy it and then you can relax to that if you want to? But if you like to dance, you can dance if you want to. Shake that booty meat. Human mind is rarely still during. I don't know what the fuck just happened to me. Yet the human mind is still rarely. Wait. The human mind is rarely still during the experience, whether you're dancing or not. You get some vibrations going on in there. I'm kidding, but it's very active. It's kind of a globally activating event, music. You want more about that? Oliver Sacks' Musicophilia is one of my favorite books of all time. And it has a lot of case studies in there of clients, patients that he worked with as a neurologist, where he was able to incorporate music based on theory onto patients with neurodevelopmental or neurocognitive disorders that would have impacted their ability to at least expressively, observably communicate that they're processing the world around them, or if they had some kind of like motor sensory need develop because of something neurological. Oliver Sacks had several case studies where he was incorporating music into his therapy with the patients, such that it, to use a familiar term from tonight, reduced the friction for them and get them a little more mobile, a little more able-bodied. Same thing working with, this is a neurodegenerative condition, but something like Alzheimer's, working with patients like that. So people of all neurotypes, he found music as a beneficial tool for, such they wrote a big book about it. Even in his letter prior to his death, he was still gleaning and glowing about the benefits of music on the mind and its healing power. A new study reveals a specific genre of a musical piece combined with the listener's familiarity and enjoyment of it actively steers the brain toward distinct types of thoughts. These mental excursions range from vivid autobiographical memories and made-up stories to critical evaluations of the composition itself. I'm no music theorist, so I rarely wax on about that, but I do love the emotional memories that I can associate with music. How about you? Telling me you can relax if you want to. If you want to rage to it while you're stuck in traffic, too, also valid. Turn that Finnish death metal right the fuck up. Live your best life. Take up space. But also, handstand twerk when and where available. It works wonders. When I've got the dexterity for it. These mental excursions range from vivid autobiographical memories to made-up stories to critical evaluations of composition itself. I'm reading that again. The findings, which offer a detailed map of thoughtscapes, I like that word, evoked by different musical styles, were published in the journal Psychology of Music. Psychologists and musicologists have established that music acts as a potent trigger for the imagination. It is well documented that a simple melody can spontaneously conjure visual imagery or retrieve deep-seated memories from listeners' past. However, prior investigations into these phenomena have typically been quite narrow in scope. Previous studies often isolated specific types of thoughts, such as concentrating solely on memory or solely on visual daydreams without looking at how they interact. Furthermore, earlier research frequently relied on a very limited selection of musical styles, often testing only 2 or 3 genres at a time. This restricted approach made it difficult to understand why a classical symphony might elicit a fictional narrative while a pop song triggers a specific memory of a person or place. To address these gaps, a research team led by Hazel A. Van de Waal of Durham University undertook a comprehensive examination of the listening mind. The team included Wei Wu and Kelly Jakubowski, also in Durham University, and Elizabeth H. Margolis from Princeton. Their primary objective was to investigate the impact of genre, familiarity, enjoyment, and musical features on the stream of consciousness. They sought to determine how different musical contexts shape the mental landscape of the listener. The researchers designed a large-scale experiment involving 701 participants recruited from the UK and the United States. To ensure the study reflected the diversity of real-world listening habits, the team curated a library of 356 musical excerpts. These clips spanned 17 different genres, representing a broad spectrum of Western music. With that, I'd love to know what everybody's had on repeat lately. That last Ash Nico album, I kind of liked a lot. I took that to the gym quite a bit. There was a remaster of a Kyoto's album that I used to listen to like 20 years ago too. It was remastered. I've kind of been on that shit lately. It's emo as fuck, but I love it. It's good gym tunes. The car rides are usually podcasts, mental health related. Yeah, there's a. I'll have to pull it up in a second. There's a Kyoto's remaster, but yeah. If your stomach feels weak, then my work here is dead. You know that old track. So you've got kind of a mature, like gravelly vocal that I dig it. I dig it. Same thing with like the Thrice remaster from the Artist in the Ambulance. It just goes a little harder. What's another one? Oh, there's a Japanese producer, goes by the name Cornelius, that I stopped listening to, I don't know, a while ago because there was such a gap between his albums that I thought he retired from music. And then when I looked a couple of days ago, he has like 4 albums out that I completely missed. And I love Cornelius. Like it's super dancey. It's kind of like old Caribou, old Fortet, a lot of sample based but natural instrumentation. Very busy, very pretty, and a lot of it's super dancey, surprisingly. Okay, so they incorporated ambient music. I love ambient, it's one of my favorites. Country, I don't listen to a lot of country. Surprise, surprise, heavy metal, video game music. That was my most listened over last year's video game music. Jazz, folk, and hip hop, so everything I currently listen to. Alongside decade-specific categories like 60s and 80s pop. Each excerpt was 30 seconds long and instrumental, preventing any lyrical content from directly dictating the listener's thoughts. Participants listened to a random selection of these clips and were asked to report what occupied their minds during each track. The study provided several categories for these thoughts. Some options focused on the music itself, while others covered music-evoked thoughts. These included memories of past media consumption, such as film or video games. I like that they did that because playing video games, especially playing video game music, rather, is going to evoke a different type of reminiscence, I would think. Potentially something deeper, since you were actively engaged with like playing a story and projecting yourself into an avatar while that music was playing. I'd be curious to see what people wrote down when they heard like 30 seconds of like the intro level to Mario Brothers 2, you know, and what came up for them. I bet that was pretty positive. These included moments of past media consumption, such as film or video games, and fictional imaginings where the listener invented a story or scene. Other categories captured autobiographical memories from the listener's own life or abstract visualizations of shapes and colors. The researchers also tracked mind wandering, defined as thoughts about everyday matters or future plans that were unrelated to the music. In addition to categorizing their thoughts, participants rated each musical excerpt on several scales. They indicated how familiar they were with the piece and how much they enjoyed it. They also assessed the music's emotional qualities, specifically its valence, which refers to how positive or negative it sounds, and its arousal or energy level. Finally, listeners rated the degree of contrast within the clip, noting whether the music changed drastically over the 30-second duration. The results demonstrated that the genre of music exerts a powerful influence on the listener's internal experience. Film music, in particular, stood out for its ability to transport listeners away from the technical aspects of the composition. The genre frequently triggered memories of other media, such as scenes from movies or television programs. Even when the specific track was unidentified, that's curious because there are film composers that have tracks that have repeated in a couple of scores. So it would make sense why you would hear them and associate them with more than one film. Even when a specific track was unidentified, the stylistic conventions of the genre seemed to prompt listeners to construct their own fictional narratives. You know, in a lot of cases, you can play video game music for somebody and they'll guess that it is from a video game, but they're not always right. The researchers suggest that film music is compositionally designed to support storytelling, which naturally leads the mind towards narrative imagining. Leads the mind towards narrative imagining. I have a single country album I like, mostly because it's very folky. Like, are you talking like old stuff, like Hank Williams era, Patsy Cline kind of stuff? Or maybe something newer. If there's newer stuff that kind of checks that box, I'd be into it. Or what's the there's a new guy that's kind of blowing up. That he's a little guy that's kind of got like a Tom Waits kind of rasp, little crooner, brilliant lyrics, like a country Connor Oberst. What's his name? Wells? Something Wells? I don't think I've got that right. Colin shared the music with me months ago, and I liked it. The study also identified a unique effect regarding video game music. The genre is notably effective at reducing thoughts about everyday stuff, such as chores and other daily anxieties. The immersive nature of video game music, composed or gaming composed for music, appears to engage the listener in a way that blocks out mundane distractions. You know what's really funny about this? Just kind of naturally intuiting when we listen to video game music. I don't think I was alone in spinning up like Skyrim ambience or just any kind of ambient video game soundtrack, but especially Skyrim when I was working on a project or writing or just something I needed to put some deep focus on, because the music was designed to explore with some intent and goal direction by, or wander aimlessly by. And so it's not going to have, big trills and, cacophony breaks and be too distracting. It's going to be really pleasant and consistent and not really ebb and flow all that much, at least not sharply. Anybody else put on video game music to study by or work by or productivity by? Ever? If so, what was your flavor? Yeah, I had like hours, hundreds probably, into the Skyrim ambient soundtrack. This finding highlights the potential utility of specific genres in managing attention and regulating mood. Well, we already know there's studies, and we talked about them. Was it last month? It wasn't that long ago. Of varying neurotypes having a preference for any music at all. So like an individual level for music, this was not categorically defined, but especially persons with ADHD preferred that when they were doing, like deep work, they preferred to have music on in the background as compared to others without that diagnosis. And again, that was just one study, so that's not encompassing every single person with ADHD. It's not how it works. Familiarity with the music proved to be a major driver of where the mind wandered. When listeners recognized a track, they were more likely to experience autobiographical memories. This aligns with the idea that familiar songs often served as soundtracks to specific periods in a person's life. Familiarity also increased the likelihood of having thoughts focused on the music itself, because, perhaps, the listener could anticipate what was coming next. And ain't that funny? That's how like reminiscence and nostalgia works. As if we were exposed to something we're familiar, we draw out benefit from it. We have powerful memories associated with it. We want to revisit it because we know how the story goes. But unlike some other things that we're exposed to, the potency does not necessarily diminish. Familiarity also increased the likelihood of having thoughts focused on the music itself. Wait, did I just read that? Oh yeah. Conversely, unfamiliar music was generally less likely to trigger specific media memories. However, an exception to this familiarity rule emerged with the film music genre. While unfamiliarity usually decreased media memories, participants reported more media-related associations when they recognized a piece of film's music. This suggests that when listeners know a film score, they actively retrieve the cinematic context they have previously experienced. The degree of enjoyment a listener felt played a central role in fostering creativity. Data showed that when participants enjoyed the music, they were more likely to engage in fictional imaginings. High enjoyment ratings and also correlated with an increase in autobiographical memories. This supports the psychological theory that positive emotional states encourage an open, exploratory mindset. When listeners liked what they heard, they were less likely to tune out and think about their daily to-do lists. That's so cool. that covers the gist of it. Researchers also examined how different types of thoughts tended to cluster together. There was a moderate connection between media memories and fictional imaginings. This implies that recalling a movie scene might inspire the listener to spin off a new invented narrative. Conversely, when listeners were focused on analyzing the technical features of the music, they were less likely to engage in fictional storytelling. This suggests a potential trade-off between analytical listening and creative immersion. Despite these caveats, the study offers a rich and nuanced view of the listening mind. It moves beyond simple emotion labeling to describe complex thoughtscapes, we like that word, that music generates. I'll drop this article and everything we've discussed tonight in the Discord, but they live elsewhere, so there's that link if you want it. Mario and Zelda Lo-Fi are always in rotation. I like those too. Have you noticed they help you with your focus or anything else? Anything this article spoke to? Reinforce what you kind of already intuited from having the music on in the first place? I used to do video game music many years ago, but not as much lately. It was often Mega Man, Chrono Trigger, and sometimes Final Fantasy. I like a lot of the Final Fantasy tracks too. Well, we've had Chrono Trigger on the playlist here plenty, haven't we? A lot of what's on the Just Chatting playlist actually is from Final Fantasy VIII, Chrono Trigger, a little bit from 9. There's some redone like jazz interpretations of several Square songs that you hear in there, from like a couple from Nier. I gotta put some varnish on my moneymakers here, mamas. Got a little dry. Tron Legacy OST is the ultimate lock-in. Is that the one with that Daft Punk did, or is that the newer one with Trent Reznor? On the recent country album, OTG was Sturgill Simpson. Okay. I know the name, I don't know the tunes. I think the guy I was trying to remember is more of a folk singer, I guess, that kind of gets lumped into like easily gets lumped into alt country, but isn't really. Yes, I heard what my throat was doing there for a second. I was like, yeah. Making sounds while I word find. Jesse Wells. That's who I was trying to think of earlier. It was Jesse Wells. You've probably heard some of his music lately. It's good. Overtly political in the best way. Need background music for reading also. Hey. Does that help kind of paint the theme a little bit? Hi, Misty. Welcome in. We're about to take a break. I'm going to take a longer break this time just so I can say hi to Nina. To catch you up, Misty, we just talked through a really nice article on how music and different themes, categories of music, like video game music, music from film, or across multiple genres, how they contextually bring up different flavors of episodic or autobiographical memory. Suffice to say, music is powerful. Thank you for that. We chatted through another article from the APA about what to do with the chronic stress associated with media hygiene.
You must first.
Hopefully had some good takeaways from that. I showed everybody how to find a therapist earlier. We'll do that again because that's important to revisit every 90 days or so. I think we'll do that. And now it's time for me to go piss girl. Welcome in, Misty. That ain't the only shout out. Misty has a custom. God damn. There it is. Yeah, mama. But somehow I underestimated the amount of time that I would belch into the mic and yammer through all of that. Excuse me. Did not anticipate going 3 hours here, but we did, and now I know that I can. Now that I know that I can. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, Twilight Princess. We're not gonna finish it tonight. But we'll get closer than we were. Misty, last question I asked was, and I know you have excellent taste in music. A couple of things. Do you find yourself enjoying being able to focus better with music on in the background? And what have you been listening to lately outside of that? Two-parter. Got a two-parter for you here. For that matter, everybody, share what you've been listening to. Peer-to-peer music discovery. We're about that. Make friends. Give sugars. And for the third time tonight, scan your body meats from your toes to your tingles and identify what sensory needs you have to meet. Check in somatically. It'll help turn you towards your intero and proprioception and give yourself all that you've discovered that you need. If it is more of me, thank you. If you're interested in kicking it with us for Twilight Princess, that's what we're up to when I get back from break. I'm going to take a 5-minute break this time instead of a 3-minute break. So, give you all a little extra time to discover what needs you have to meet. And if I remain on your dopamine menu, if you got to scoot, I get it. It's Sunday. The Monday through Friday 9-to-5ers may have an excuse to poot off to bed. I got a few more hours in me as it happens. I'll be back. Make Misty feel welcome. Too, she just got here and I got a scoop. Back soon, babies.
This is a magic house.